All right, we got to talk about Battlefield 6, specifically the second open beta, and compare that with the first open beta. The numbers are kind of interesting, and we're going to talk about that. We're going to make some predictions and also compare these numbers with Battlefield 2042 to see kind of where we're at and where this franchise seems to be heading. So before we get into all of that, a quick announcement. I'm going to be taking a break from YouTube for about 4 weeks, maybe 5. It's a combination of wanting to work on my game and really focus on game development, as well as something I want to try with YouTube. There's a test I want to do and see what happens, and that requires me to step away for a period of time. So we're going to see what happens there. And once I come back, though, we'll be back with the videos and doing things just like we were. So without further ado, let's just jump into these numbers. So second beta test, you can see here, the peak was about 408,000. And it just kind of dropped off over the previous or the coming days after that. And that's not a great sign because it kind of shows me there's a waning interest in this game, especially when you compare that to the previous open beta, which had that peak of 521,000. So it is a considerable drop, not a huge drop, but it is appreciable. It's gonna leave a mark. It's gonna have an impact on the overall sales of the game, I think. And there's a couple of reasons, I think, why this happened, why there wasn't as much interest in the second open beta as the first. The one obvious reason is everybody wanted to jump in there and try it out. And once they did, they had probably made their decisions, and maybe they got busy this following weekend and just didn't, jump back in or decided not to pursue it. The other two reasons, so that's probably the biggest reason. The other two reasons, I think, are a combination of two things. The first reason is the anti-cheat. Now, the anti-cheat for me, which I'm obviously in the minority, is it just knocked me completely out of being able to play the beta. As you guys know, I'm a Linux gamer. I run all my platforms on Linux because at this point, it works better for my setup. It works better for my dev environment to be focused on Linux and go into Windows for the Windows builds. I'm just used to it. It's a lot easier. It's a lot less overhead and just works better for me. So I stay in Linux, and that kind of knocked me out of Battlefield 6. So that I realize I'm in the minority for that. The other reason, though, with the anti-cheat, which is most people, is it doesn't seem to be working the way it's supposed to work. It doesn't seem to be catching a lot of the cheaters that are cheating. There's been reports of, complaints of people cheating in the game. There's been it on video where there's, obviously aimbots in use, and there's issues going on there. And the anti-cheat just isn't capturing that, but somehow it manages to capture everything else under the sun. So some erroneous exe running on your machine, and it catches that, and it says, "Oh, you can't run Battlefield 6." Well, that's kind of annoying because it's thinking you're cheating when you're not, and then it thinks that the cheaters are not cheating when they are. So that is a big can of worms, and I actually want to do a video on that in the future as to how I think about especially kernel level anti-cheat and the fact that it just doesn't work anymore the way they expect it to. So that's going to be a video down the road, but I think the anti-cheat is a big reason here. The other reason I think is mechanics. I think that the almost to where it needs to be mechanics is probably turning some people away because they're smelling they're smelling some of the stink of Battlefield 2042 and those mechanics. Some of that, modern EA Battlefield style approach is sneaking in, which is understandable. I mean, they can't purge all of it all at once. They can't go right back to Battlefield 2 mechanics and just start from there. I think that there was a concerted effort to drag this thing back into the mechanics that made Battlefield what it is. But they haven't lost all of the stink of that, and I think that a lot of people are smelling that. So that could be leading to that decline in usage in simultaneous users as well. So those are the two reasons I think. Now, is this going to have an effect on the sales of the game overall? That's the real question. We're going to answer that in a minute here. I think that it will have somewhat of an effect, but I don't think it's going to be completely destroy the sales of Battlefield 6. I think it's still going to do better than Battlefield 2042. In the long run, it's going to be considerably better. I think in the short run, it'll still be appreciably better too. I think there's going to be a lot of people jumping into this. And so why do I think that? Well, there's a couple of reasons, and we're going to jump into that right now. So the first one is, obviously player counts If you go over to Battlefield 2042 here, you can see that their simultaneous player count maxed out at 107,000, and that was a free weekend, and launch day. Launch day was 105,000. So they've never gotten the numbers even remotely close to the open beta. Now, again, like I said in the previous videos, the open beta was free. Battlefield 2042 was not. So that does have an effect, but I think that those numbers are going to be pretty close to release simultaneous users. I think their launch numbers are probably going to be half of that, so closer to 200,000, but that's double what Battlefield 2042 got, and I think that that's going to be reflective of consoles and other platforms too. So it's going to be a universal effect across the board because, you know, whether you're playing it on a console or a PC or wherever, it doesn't really change how you think of the game, how you think of the mechanics. If you're a Battlefield player, you're a Battlefield player. You want to play the game if you want to play the game. And really the opinions of that is going to be shared universally across all platforms. So I think this is a good indicator for the bigger picture of all platforms, all consoles. And so we're going to make some predictions based on that. So the Steam numbers for 2042 are not bad. I mean, you can see here 5.94 million estimated owners is the low end, and then 9.32 million is the upper end. Now, this is over the sales of the entire lifetime of the game. It was actually much less than this. It was actually idealistically around 5 million sales within the first month or so, maybe fewer, maybe 2 to 3. But we're going to call it 5 because we don't have real numbers on that, but we do have decent estimates, so we're going to call it 5. I think that Battlefield 6 is going to do close to twice that in the first month. I would predict, 7 to 10 million in the first month, and then maybe upwards of 15 to 20 million over the course of the game overall. And another reason why I think that is that you can see here the follower count. The follower count for 2042, just before launch, around where we are right now, was about 200 to 230,000. Somewhere in that range is where it was. Battlefield 6's follower count you can see here. Let's just refresh this to make sure. So yeah, the Battlefield 6 follower count is at that 200 already, and it's well on course to make a considerable impact. Now, the other thing that held 2042 back was everybody was anticipating it beforehand, but once it got launched, a lot of people were showing just how bad that game was and complaining about issues. It doesn't seem like Battlefield 6 has those issues. We would have seen them in the open beta, so I'm suspecting that we're not going to see that same bad press come out, that same bad word of mouth impact sales on Battlefield 6. So I think Battlefield 6, this 200,000 follower count, is significantly more impactful than the 200,000 followers at Battlefield 2042's launch. And so I would, again, say a doubling of those sales. So we're really on track to that 7 to 10 million in the first month or so of the sales on Steam alone. And then you can basically triple or quadruple that across all platforms, including consoles, because that's kind of my rule of thumb is you triple to quadruple it. That kind of gives you an idea of, PC, PlayStation, Xbox, Switch. It kind of rolls everything into one. It's a very loose back of the envelope calculation. It's not really accurate, but it'll get you close. So I'm going to say, you're looking at probably 20 on the low end to about 40 million sales in the first month across all platforms. And again, those numbers are very hard to come by. EA sometimes reports them, very rarely, and I don't think they're going to do that for Battlefield 6. I think they're going to keep those numbers close to the chest, so we were never really going to know. But I suspect that that's probably going to be the case. That's probably going to be where they're at, and that's pretty good for a Battlefield game, especially comparing it to 2042. It could be better than that, but I'm keeping my estimates pretty conservative, just to make sure that I'm under the wire and not over. I would be surprised if they were lower than my estimates. So, yeah, I think it's going to do well. I think it's going to be fairly well received, and I think these two open betas gave people an idea of what that platform is going to be, what the game is going to be about. And, it seems like overall it's positively received, just so that a few of those complaints, like the anti-cheat not working and causing issues, and then obviously the mechanics are closer, but not quite where they need to be. There's some complaints about the mechanics too. So I think they could address one or both of those at least partially before launch, and it would probably behoove them to do that because I think that would affect the overall long-term sales of the game, bringing them to a much higher number over time and preventing the Battlefield 2042 situation from happening again. But yeah, that's what I got for you guys. Hope you enjoyed this video. And if you like these kind of things, subscribe to the channel, and I will talk to you guys in a few weeks.